And all new at 5, a major organized crime bust. 23 people under arrest now accused of stealing guns and cash.
Today, police revealed 4 organized crime groups are wreaking havoc.
From aggravated robbery to kidnapping, burglary, and more. Let's take a look at this. New pictures from court documents in this case. These were a few of the people who have been charged, and investigators say the money, tens of thousands of dollars, is all stolen.
FBI, open up!
Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today we're going to talk about Jon Jr. doing this podcast and saying that he's the reason that Sammy Gravano's family is alive today. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. A lot of great things in the works. We have some major things going on in the backstage area, or whatever you want to say it. We're working every day, moving towards bigger and better things. Shout out to Lindsay. Thank you for joining me. Pink Panther, what's going on? Punch got some major things going on. Mustang Mike, how are you? If you guys don't know, I'm going to be on Vice. Big things in the works, and even bigger things in the future. We have some major things going on. We're going to be making some announcements probably very soon. Hey, what's up, Frank? How are you? Did you guys see the response that Areola put to Joey Merlino? Oh, man. Put down the alcohol, Areola. Harry Areola. You are losing it, bro. But anyway, let's get into the first video today. It's Jon Jr. talking about Sammy Gravano. Hit the like button. Share the video. If you don't like it, too bad. Let's get into it.
When I did that interview, I go to New York all the time. I love New York. I love the people. I get along with the people. And, you know, later on in life, when I did Ancestry, you know, when you find out what your background's all about, apparently I'm 18% Italian. Someone in my family hooked up with an Italian we don't know about, right? So I've always gotten along with Italians. I go to New York, and you have to. You would be like, how could you interview Sammy? He is lying. He's this. He's that. And then I would have some guys that would come up there and say, but look, you heard the recording? You know, recording when Jon kind of threw Sammy under the bus? And he made, what I'm saying to you is in the recording. So Sammy...
Jon should have killed Sammy, quite frankly.
Well,
Jon should have killed Sammy. He says it right there. So Patrick Beck-David talks about how Angel started attacking him for interviewing Sammy Gravano. It's funny, but now her brother is on the same show. Come on.
That's what Sammy said he thought he was going to kill him.
He should have killed him earlier. He should have killed him. Listen, Sammy was a guy that was green eyes. He was a monster, okay? This is a guy, and he talks about, you know, this is an amazing thing, because when they go in front of the judge, when they're going to get their sentence reduced, all of these cooperatives, what they do is they cry and say, I only pulled the trigger one time. Including Sammy. He said he only pulled the trigger one time. But now he boasts 19 kills. I killed 19 people.
That is
no, he conspired. He schemed.
It is absolutely true. He brags about all these 19 murders. He didn't do 19 murders. He had some kind of affiliation with 19 murders, but he didn't do them. And then there's another one that's going to blow your mind. Sammy Gravano wasn't there when Paul Castellano was killed. Did you know that? I think I reported on that about a year ago. Sammy Gravano was never in the car. He wasn't there. All that bullshit, they were in the car waiting, they drove by. You know how much traffic is in that area? I've been there. I know what it's like down there. It is packed with traffic. You're not just going to stroll on by. Definitely not going to happen, especially with a shooting happening and all that. This dude's feeding bullshit.
And killed 19 people. Let's get that straight. And including 2 innocent people. Nobody wants to talk about the 2 innocent people. Why? Why don't anybody want to talk about Alan Kaiser, a 16-year-old boy that through mistaken identity, not Louis Milito, Sammy Gravano shot Alan Kaiser in the head. I know this because I've interviewed people in his crew. When Sammy flipped, okay, I brought them into the lawyer's offices and told them, look, guys, open up. Be truthful here, because they knew I was their protector. They knew that there was a faction within the group that wanted to kill all of them for being loyal to Sammy at one time, including Sammy's family. I wouldn't let it happen. There's another cooperator named Mikey Scott.
Oh, he said he would not let it happen. He would not let them hurt Sammy's family. They wanted to go after the mom, the daughter, the son. They did not care, but they laid off the family. I mean, Sammy doesn't seem too very appreciative that his life was spared. Rest in peace to Alan Kaiser. And listen, even after he passes away, I'll be here to kick dirt all over his name. Don't worry about that, Sammy. It'll never end for you.
Di Leonardo. He knew all the particulars. In fact, I was using Michael to drive them
Scabs.
in. Drive them into the city.
Mikey Scabs. Mikey Scabs Di Leonardo. Mikey Scabs, he's known as in the streets. He is one of the most despicable rats. Now he's on YouTube acting like he's he tries to act like he didn't do shit wrong. It's very weird how these people act. It's insane. It really is.
Safe passage. I made him bring them up to my Pocono house. This way they felt comfortable. We hunted together. They were suspicious that maybe I was looking to kill them. We met, we spoke. I said, look, nobody's going to harm you guys. Nobody's going to harm you.
This is Mikey Scars or no?
This is Mikey Scars was close to me, and Michael bringing them in, and I have assured all of Sammy's crew, nobody's going to harm you guys, okay? But I'm keeping you guys, I'm helping you. I'm here, I'm in your corner. Jon, unless Jon, that order comes from Jon, and it never will come from Jon, you guys are safe. But you have to cooperate here with us. You have to go in and talk to the lawyers. You have to tell us everything about Sammy Gravano. Jon Gotti met Sammy Gravano for the first time in 1977 when he came out of prison. Met him for the first time. And he only met him through a couple of nightclubs coming and going, okay? He didn't really know Sammy well enough. He began to know him later on in life, so we need to get all these facts put together. So I established what I call the Eddie Garofalo file, okay? Which was his brother-in-law. Eddie Garofalo was his brother-in-law, his older brother-in-law. And he opened up. And I have all that, all the interview we done, he opened up, we have it all typed up. And he talks about the rift between Sammy Gravano and Louis Milito. And the rift happened because Louis Milito, who was a tough guy, stand-up guy and a real tough guy in his own right. And Sammy had a problem.
Raven.
Apparently he had a problem when
Shout
he
out
fought with
to
some
Raven.
bikers. They roughed him up or whatever. He went and got Louis and came back. And both had guns on them. Sammy says, that's one of them right there. They rolled up on the kid. Sammy rolled down the window and shot the kid in the head. He always said that Louis Milito did it. Louis Milito never forgave him for putting him in that position. The kid went down as a John Doe at first, until at some point later on, they came to a conclusion who this kid was. And even when the FBI was issuing the reports of all his murders, that kid was down as John Doe, okay? Which is an insult to his family. Alan Kaiser was down as John Doe, which is an insult to his family. But Louis Milito never let Sammy live that down, that he was put in that position and an innocent 16-year-old kid was shot in the head and killed. He never let him live that down. And Sammy at some point conspired, because Louis would slap Sammy.
Hey, some big-time executives think my channel is pretty awesome, too. And I got some big news coming. Stay tuned.
Louis was a tough guy and Sammy wasn't. And at some point, they had it came to a point, and Sammy went to the chief and basically made up a story that this guy's, was loyal to Paul or whatever. It was a cockamamie story, okay? It's probably above my pay grade, But ultimately, in the end, he conspired and got Louis Milito killed. Okay, this is what he does. But you take that, for example, and you take his...
All right, wait till you see the part when he talks about Nick Scibetta, what Jon Jr. says. It is hilarious. You ready?
Brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, Nick Scibetta, he talks about how Paul authorized him to kill Nick Scibetta. If Paul knew who Nick Scibetta was, excuse my crassness, am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Whatever's not nailed down in this room, you could shove up my ass. How's that sound? If Paul had any idea who a guy named Nick Scibetta was. He was a civilian.
Wait,
from what Mikey Scars...
What did he just say? He said anything in this room that's not nailed down, you could shove up his ass. Why would you say that? Like, I don't get it.
Crassness, am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Whatever's not nailed down in this room, you could shove up my ass. How's that sound? If Paul had any idea who a guy named Nick Scibetta was. He was a civilian. But Mikey Scars told me, they went to school together. He said he was a happy-go-lucky kid, riding his bicycle in the area. Yeah, he had some problems, like every...
He said, shove up his ass. I think we're lagging. What?
Crassness, am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Whatever's not nailed down in this room, you could shove up my ass. How's that sound? If Paul had any idea who a guy named Nick Scibetta was. He was a civilian. From what Mikey Scars told me, they went to school together. He said he was a happy-go-lucky kid, riding his bicycle in the area. Yeah, he had some problems, like everybody else, like a lot of other people did at that time. But he didn't warrant to be killed. He got killed because he knew some deep, dark secrets maybe about Gravano. But that certainly was not a warranted mob killing. Those were two killings there, and you could take them immediately off that list. Those were civilians. So to sit there and project yourself as this guy, this good guy. He was never a good guy. He was a treacherous, scheming guy. Money was his god. His family was alive because of me. My father, when Sammy first flipped, the first visit went to see him. He was sick to his stomach. He said, you know what? I violated my own ethics, he said.
Who's saying this, Sammy?
My father saying this to me.
Yeah.
In the visit in MCC, when they walked Sammy out that night.
I think he said some really weird stuff in this interview, too. Big Boy Blue says, I actually watched it all, and I thought he said some weird things, like I cut my finger off, etc., and what he's dead man's like so long ago. He said some really weird stuff, like anything not nailed down in this room, you could shove it up my ass. Why would you say something like that? Very odd. Another thing he said was, he was talking about something, and he said some weird shit. Oh, he says, I was a civilian. I would have did life before anyone else went to prison. Stop it. If you were a civilian, then you were a civilian, but you weren't a civilian. You were definitely involved in that life. You don't just walk away from it and become a civilian all of a sudden. You were not a civilian when you played that little trick on the government, the one that everyone calls him a rat for. You know, when he went in there and gave him some information that was wrong information or whatever he did. The bottom line is he cooperated with the government and everyone thinks he's a rat. And I think that is eating Junior up inside. I really do. He was like trying to explain it away. And I told these guys I was going and doing that. And I told Joe Messina and all this and that. And I'm like, doesn't matter. Everyone still thinks you're a rat. I mean, it is what it is, right? Everyone out there thinks this guy's a rat. Go look at the comments. Millions of people think he's a cooperator because he cooperated. Whether it's giving them false information or good or bad information, it doesn't matter. Cooperation is cooperation. his father said, "You don't take plea bargains." Remember? I don't know. It's just crazy. Another thing, he was talking about when his father got into the fight. Like, if his father wasn't, he said his father was handcuffed and the guy sucker punched him. Listen, your father wasn't whooping no 26-year-old's ass at that time. You even said it. He had cancer. Yeah, I know you want your dad to be the superhero and all this, but listen, you can't beat everybody. And the bottom line is, your father can get his ass kicked. I hate to break it to you. I mean, I got nothing against Gotti Jr., but I mean, he's going to stick up for his father. That's his father. But, you know, the guy was 26 years old at the time, and Gotti was how old? And he had cancer, or he was sick. Come on. He's not going to beat everybody. He wasn't like a prize fighter. Everyone knows that. The guy had the balls to punch Jon Gotti. Anyone can get beat up. You're 100% right, Grudge Truck. Anyone. And that guy proved that Jon Gotti can get beat up. Even if it was a sucker punch, he still got him. Can't take it back.
The previous night, actually. I think it was November 8th, if I'm not mistaken. He said, Punk couldn't do any time. He said, the Punk couldn't do any time. He says, that's it. Couldn't do time. And I says, well, and I'm watching him vent a bit, my father. He's like this, and he's looking back, and he's completely beside himself. Like he's disappointed, not that he didn't expect, he's disappointed in himself for allowing this guy to move up. He's disappointed. His love for Frankie DeChico and some of the old timers that were proponents of Gravano, for listening. John had there were better choices, and he allowed this guy to become what he is. And he fully knew before they got pinched what he was. He started now to pay attention and see what Sammy really was. Okay. And I'm waiting for instructions like, what are we supposed to do? Here we are. We're sitting here. I'm here. Jackie D'Amico, my Uncle Pete, are listening to my father.
Pink Panther says, yeah, these old analogies like the steeple sticking out of my ass comments, where do they come from? Like, you could take all this furniture here and shove it up my ass. Like, where do you come up with that type of shit? I'm just... Yeah, oh yeah, that keyboard, yep, that could go. Yeah, the desk, no problem. Microphones, hey, stick it all up there, no big deal. Oh, God.
And then he turns to me and he says, you make sure, John, nobody harms his family. We don't do that. Make sure nobody harms his family. I left. Gathered everybody up and went to everybody, went to all the social clubs.
I want to ask you guys a question. I think I have the answer to this. Do you know why Jon Gotti Sr. said that about Gravano's family? I think I know the answer. Do you guys know why he said, do not touch Gravano's family? Because Jon Gotti Sr. was in prison and he didn't want anything to happen to his family. So he figures the tit for tat thing, you know? So I'm thinking that is what happened. He said, don't touch his family because he was in prison. He didn't want anyone to do anything to his family.
And I said, make sure. And I got a lot of pushback. There was a group of individuals that wanted to take his house down. They wanted to take his house down with his family in it. And they wanted it, and they couldn't have his crew. They wanted them. And I told them it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This is not Italy. Okay, this is America. Jon Gotti is not those men. It's not going to happen, and that's that. And we did not let it happen. Did he care? Did he care? He went into the program. Now remember now, he went into the program and did this when the mob wasn't squeamish on hurting people. Maybe they are now. But they had a penchant for hurting people back then. A lot of people. Okay?
John, is it fair to say, you know, for the audience that's watching this, rightfully so. You have to defend 100% your father. Nothing,
Absolutely.
so emotionally,
And always will.
and by the way, no one expects anything different, right? Now, for the viewer
Patrick
who is
seems like he
emotionally
has
connected,
cold.
like I remember when I interviewed Sammy, your sister.
Sounds like he has a serious cold. He's all congested and like in the movies. I got this computer sticking out of my ass just like in the movies. Because he didn't want anything to happen to his family, 100%.
Sister came after me. I don't know if you remember the
I've never watched the interview.
Okay, well, I'll tell you.
I'm not computer literate. I never watch any podcast.
No,
I don't do
well,
it.
I think
this
that's
is
good
where-
for you because it's more.
This is where Patrick Beck-David says Angel came after him because he interviewed Sammy Gravano.
Peaceful.
I just don't do
But
it.
I mean, I got tweets after tweets. You realize what, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, messages, phone calls, all this stuff. But for somebody that's not attached to it emotionally, did you ever listen to the recording? The recording that they say where your father is.
I have them. I have the original tapes. It's he talking to Frankie Lacazio and saying, Frankie was an older man. Frankie was one of the classiest operators in that world.
Mustang. Terrible movie.
Probably one of the youngest guys in history to get the job, to go into that world, to go into that life. I think he was about 23 when he got the job, Frankie. And my father trusted Frankie. He was an elder statesman, a man of very limited words. Very limited words. In fact, the only time I really ever had him, he had an open conversation.
Mustang, that was one of the worst movies ever. One of the worst mob movies ever. The Gotti movie with John Travolta. Like, they shouldn't have used John Travolta. The one with, what's his name? Ahmad Assad. That one was really good. But that one was terrible. And they were all acting like it was the greatest thing. He finally admitted that it wasn't great. That it just wasn't.
Really was at his sentencing. Is when he told Judge Glasser that
100%. I love Pink Panther says, I love Jon Gotti Sr. 100%. Man's man, 10 toes down. You don't make them like this anymore. Just saying, the last of the Mohegans. Junior is not senior. Period. I totally agree. He definitely has some mannerisms like his father had. And I think people are drawn to that and they want to know about senior through junior. I think that's the fascination with him. Do you know that his interview had over 100,000 views by that night? That is insane. And I'll tell you how many views it has in a minute.
You're giving me a life sentence. However, it's an honor to be Jon Gotti's friend. If there were more men like Jon Gotti in this world would be a better place. And he praised my father to the high heavens because Frankie was a traditional loyalist. He adored my father. My father adored him right back. Okay, right back. So this is Jon Gotti, who does he talk to? There's no complaint department. He is it. The buck stops with Jon Gotti, right? So he's talking to his number 2 guy, Frankie, very close to him. He's talking to Frankie. He's saying, Frankie, what do you want me to do here? He says, I've got all skippers coming in. This one's coming. His names, they're coming in. He keeps opening up businesses all over the place. We're not supposed to open up businesses. Paul did that. We're not supposed to open up businesses. We're supposed to let the men open the businesses. They got to earn. Okay, the men have to earn. They'll take care of us. But we can't be robbing contracts. We can't be doing this, that, or the other thing. We can't be doing these things. Sammy was killing people and then taking over their companies or going in a particular business, whereas that drywall. There was a company that operated and sold and did drywall, okay? Now, they would do their business. They would comply with the bids, and they would grease the right skids to keep things moving along. Mm-hmm. But then, Sammy, if you're an administrator, you're not supposed to have a crew. You're not supposed to have being in business where you can compete with the men and take business away from them. It's a no-brainer then, because you're the guy who's a
412,000 views. That interview has, the 3-hour interview has 412,000 views in 2 days. That is crazy. And that is the reason, like, I think people are really drawn to his story because of his father. And then he has a bunch of shorts that have 200,000 views, 79,000 views. Like, it's insane. The amount of views, 74. It's insane. And Gotti Sr., we love you too. Thank you, Raven. Appreciate it.
Signing the jobs. So you're going to sign all the jobs to yourself. Okay? And this is what he was doing. And Jon was at wit's end. And he was looking for a little guidance from Frankie, someone he knew for many, many years and he trusted. Like, how do I react to this guy? I'm going to pull his card. I'm going to pull him in and address him on this. But Frankie, what's the right approach? And it wasn't just one visit. It wasn't just one wiretap. It was two different separate occasions. There were two different dates, two different wiretaps where he's talking to Frankie. And then there's a third one, which Sammy doesn't talk about, where Jon is addressing Sammy, okay? And he's telling Sammy basically, okay, this is at the end of all of this. He comes to terms with it, not in that wiretap, not in any of those wiretaps. He pulls,
Definitely
Frankie goes and gets
Mustang.
Sammy, brings him to the chief late at night, and my father reads him the riot act. And he basically tells him, enough now, enough. We got men coming in complaining about you. You got skippers coming in, so on and so forth, complaining about you. You want to be a captain? I'll reduce you back to a captain. You want to be a soldier? I'll reduce you back to a soldier. What do you? No. Okay, then enough now. Back off. You can't be doing these things. And that was it. There was an understanding. And that's why you hear that tape afterwards of Jon saying, I'm getting pinched soon. Okay? I'm going away. Okay? And I know what I got to do once I go away. I got a life sentence. I know what I got to do. But what are you comfortable being? And he's trying to ask him what kind of position you would want to be in. So obviously, Jon came to terms. Sammy had the understanding of what Jon's expectations were of him, and everybody was going to move forward. Now, you heard those tapes at bail hearings. Mm-hmm. He did, meaning Sammy did. You were Jon's cellmate. You were my father's cellmate. Why don't you take care of your business? Why don't you take care of your business? He said nothing. He said nothing, okay?
He says...
He understood my father was...
He says he wanted to kill Jon Gotti, but he didn't. What?
Angry at him.
What do you mean by that? Why don't you take care of business?
Should have killed Jon. You were a cellmate. Kill him. That door locks. It's you and the man.
Well, he said he wanted to.
He did. I want to fly a space shuttle, but I don't know how to. Okay? Sammy never did a tough guy thing other than scheme. And he said he pulled the trigger one time. You believe the story that he got the nickname because he was a good fighter, the Bull? Do you believe that? He told you that, right? Did he tell you that on your show? Did he say that?
We debunked.
My nickname, the...
We debunked how he got the nickname. It's because he's from Bullhead. That's how he got the nickname. It wasn't because he was a little scrappy fighter and he got his bike back. That's a good story. Don't get me wrong. Good story. That's all it is, story.
Bull came because some old timers and say, oh, look at the little bull. No. He got the nickname the Bull because he's from Bull's Head, Staten Island. There were 3 different individuals that were in that group. So to identify, Sammy from Bull became Sammy Bull. That's what he became. Because back then, Sammy was, according to the psychological report, they have him here at 5'6", but I'm 5'9", I can eat an apple off of his head. So I know he's not 5'6", he's probably closer to 5'4", 5'5". And I remember him back then. He went to beautician school. He was a very thin guy. He wasn't no bull. He became a bull years later when he thought he was going to prison and he began taking steroids. He became a bull. When he was working out in the gym with Frankie Fabiano and other individuals, and they told me he was taking the needles in his ass and they blew up to go to prison because he was so afraid of going to jail, so he wanted to put some muscle on. That's when he became a bull. But before that, he was just little Sammy from Bull's Head, which became Sammy Bull. So the nickname was a lie, okay? And again, look, I didn't want to come on the air, and I'm not here. I don't give a second thought to Sammy Gravano. I really don't. I don't watch podcasts. I don't. I'm just not. I'm not computer literate. I don't go online and do it. But he doesn't have the right. He doesn't have the right when a guy that you knew was a man's man. You saw that man, how he comported himself, how Jon Gotti comported himself. I've never seen anybody like him, and I've seen them all. And I'm not saying it because he's my father. Would I defend him regardless? Always.
Yeah.
Of course.
Always. But I'm going to tell you something.
I believe he did steroids. There's some pictures of him a little bulked up. I'll see if I can get them.
Pat, not to interrupt you.
Please, go for it.
But just to tell you this much, there's limits in how far I can go in my defense of my father. But when I have an opportunity to observe this man, and when people who did time in the most violent prisons in the country, if not the world, okay, in the most secure places in the world, and saw how he comported himself, if they're the ones who are further filling my head, if they're further filling my balloon, my head, to keep preaching the gospel, preaching Jon Gotti, okay, the attributes of Jon Gotti, look, he was the real deal. If he wasn't, you say, he's my father, I loved him. And you can rest on that note and go on to something else.
So you know what it does? Like in life, I get judged for who I befriend. I get judged for who I marry. We get judged for choices we make, investments, all this other stuff. But then you also get judged for who you make your right-hand guy. Your dad made him the underboss.
Made a mistake.
So if he is who you say he is, Sam,
yeah.
that means it's a bad judge of character, because the underboss is like, I mean, it's who John, wasn't John that to, who was the underboss with Paul Castellano before, he was taken out at stake?
Pat, to answer that question, remember Frankie DeChico was the guy. Frankie got blown up.
Right.
He got killed. Great man, a tough guy. And again, the picture, there's a picture of my father and Frankie as kids in their 20s. Frankie was like 4 or 5 years older than my dad. My father's 28 years old, and Frankie's maybe 32, 33, in Lewisburg Penitentiary with Mickey Boy Paradiso and other individuals. These guys cut their teeth in a maximum security penitentiary together. They put work in together. This goes back to the MCC visit, what my father says.
Let me see. I'm trying to get that picture. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to get this a little rebooted. Here's the picture where I think he was on steroids right here. Looks pretty much like that probably is the case. What do you think? Do you think Sammy Gravano was on steroids in that picture? There's another picture. I can't get it for some reason. Yeah, maybe I can. I think this is the same picture, but that's a close-up version. Hold on.
Couldn't do any time. My father violated his own belief. His belief is if you didn't do time with Jon Gotti, he ain't making you nobody. You ain't going nowhere with Jon Gotti. Everybody in John's circle did time with Jon Gotti. Everybody. Frankie DeChico was very close to my father because he did time with my father. He did time in Lewisburg Penitentiary, okay? In the unit, walked the yard with my father, went to wars with my father. See, Frankie, that was Frankie's position. When Frankie got killed, John, being the diplomat, did what he believed. He didn't do the right thing, but he did what he believed to be the right thing. Took a Brooklyn guy. Frankie's close friend was Sammy Gravano. He already took Frankie's old position, and now he moved him along and put him in that position in a somewhat quasi-acting position for Frankie. In Frankie's stead, Frankie being dead. He moved him along and cultivated him along. And you have to understand something, okay? The Sammy Gravano that you see today, and the Sammy Gravano that did time the way he did the time, was not the Sammy Gravano on the streets. Sammy's not a stupid guy. Sammy knows how to say the right things and do the right things. Sammy was an earner. Sammy went out. He knew how to turn the rocks over. He knew how to go find the money. He knew how to do things. He knew how to talk to people, okay? And he knew how to get things done. He was a schemer. He was a plotter. He was one of those guys. It takes a unique character to lure your best friend into a place and fully knowing, and you're having a cup of coffee and you can kill him right there on the spot. I'm not sure I'm qualified to do that. In fact, I believe I'm not, okay? So that just goes to tell you the depth of his character. So if he can do something like that, what else could he do? It's different people, you
Right.
know.
Well-
I used to say this, not to interrupt you, please.
I think I got some people a little angry, but hey, keep watching. I appreciate you. I really do. Thank you for joining me. Let's watch a little more of this. Hit the like button, subscribe. Some people do. Let's get back to the video.
I brought home a lot of good men from prison with me and helped get them jobs. As long as they're civilians, we're friends, okay? I walked away from my former life, my former existence, and I tell them the same thing. If you're going to revert back and go back to the former gang, your crew, whatever have you, please, just leave me out of this. I've been through enough. I've been through enough. My family's been through enough. But if you're going to do the right thing, okay, you're going
I guarantee you he paid about 50 grand for this interview. At least. He paid at least 50 grand for this interview. And it took quite a while. He would not go on any shows. Like, he was like, nope, none of them. But he eventually goes on Patrick Bet-David's show, who interviewed Sammy Gravano. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a little weird, right? Isn't it crazy? He goes on the same show that Sammy Gravano went on.
blue brother in every sense of the word. Take care of your family. We'll be there for each other, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah,
I got
and
your
Phil.
back. There's no problems at all. But I know these people, and I brought them over, and I bring these people to meet my family. I bring these people to my son's fights.
And he talked about Phil on this interview. He talked about Crazy Phil Leonetti. Cue Ball, what's going on? Thanks for joining me today. Remember, if you guys want to donate, we got a toy drive coming up. We're going to buy toys for the kids at the homeless shelter. You can hit up the Cash App at Chattin with Staxx or Venmo, PayPal, Super Stickers, Super Chats. You could donate through YouTube. I'm going to take the money from YouTube. And we're going to buy some toys for the kids at the shelter this year like we do every year. And I appreciate all you guys.
I brought 500 people to my son's fight in Florida when he fought Floyd Mayweather. 60 were convicts. 60 of them were convicts at the time, either my father or I. Was in 3 of them were in Marion with my dad. And you want to know what? You can't hide in prison. If you want to see someone's flaws, you want to see their character, you want to see if they're real men or not, you can't hide in prison because I'm with you 24/7. I can see everything about you. I could tell you when you brush your teeth. I could tell you when you wash your ass. You can't hide in prison. In the streets, you could hide.
Yeah, I saw that
You could
yesterday.
hide. You see me
Congratulations, big boy.
4 times a week for 2 hours each time or an hour, and you say
Hopefully we'll get some donations in this year so we can get some toys for these kids. Even if I don't get donations, I'm going to make it happen.
the right things. You comport yourself. You open the umbrella when you have to open the umbrella. You open the door when you have to open the door. You walk like a gentleman. You talk like a gentleman. You know exactly when you should speak. Okay? When the boss isn't present, when the boss walks in the room, when the chief walks in the room, in his presence, you know when you're supposed to speak and when you're not supposed to speak. Sammy knew those things. You see him in the pictures holding the umbrella for my father. You see him.
Yeah,
You
that's
see him
awesome,
opening the door.
big boy.
You see him. You see him pushing John Miller and the reporters back out of the way when John's walking down the street. You see him. He did his job. Did a pretty good job. Okay? But again, it goes back to become full circle what John said. You can't put a guy in that position unless you know if he's capable of doing time. My father used to say this, and he said this in Marion, Illinois.
Thank you,
And he was a
Mustang.
hypocrite in this respect. He said, John, looking back, to be a street guy and to live this life the right way, you should never get married. You should never have kids. Never get married, never have kids. You have to devote yourself to this. And
Yeah, but so
every guy would have to qualify, should do 1 year in Marion, Illinois, in a lock.
yeah, but he's saying, oh, you shouldn't put a person in the underboss position unless they did time with you and you know their character and all this. But he still put Sammy Gravano in that position. He knew who he was when he was around him. He knew the stuff he was doing. He was taking over businesses and killing different people. You don't think Jon Gotti had no clue what the guy was doing? He knew what he was doing. I think he was probably doing snaky stuff behind his back. But Jon Gotti knew what Sammy was up to. It wasn't like a secret what he was doing. He was taking people's business. Come on. So he's handing over all this money from these different businesses and Gotti don't know what's going on. He trusted the wrong person is what happened. He made a fatal mistake in judgment. He trusted the wrong person and he ended up spending the rest of his life in prison because of it. I mean, what would have happened if Sammy didn't flip? They probably still all would have went to prison. They just all would have went, right? Or maybe they pay the jurors and get off again. Free Blue Boy. Shout out to Blue Boy in Elmira. If you can, go check out Blue Boy Chronicles on Patreon. They got a TikTok channel.
Level 6 prison. This is the worst of the worst. Show me you could do this.
Hey,
you
no,
can do
what's
anything.
going on?
Okay? Now I know. You ain't going to flip. You ain't going to turn on your brotherhood. You ain't going to turn. You're going to be a man because your honor is going to keep you intact. Sammy wasn't capable of doing any of that. He fell apart the moment he went to jail. I mean, we've interviewed a guy who's the leader of the Ghost Shadows, a kid named Brian. The Ghost Shadows was a Chinatown gang. And he ended up somehow locked with Sammy. And he was sending messages and kites back to us. This guy's not comporting himself right. He's not doing time right. And my father began to have reservations about the choice that he made.
All right, so if someone wrote you from prison when Sammy was in prison before he was the underboss, then why would Gotti Sr. make him the underboss? It makes no sense. Okay, this guy's reporting to you saying that Sammy's not living right in here. Listen, people told me about how Sammy acted in the witness program. Insane. Go look up the interview with Robert McNeese. He breaks it all down on how Sammy was acting, how he was treating people, walking around like he's somebody special. The little dwarf. He's a dwarf. He was having those twins. The ones that told on what's his name? Those twins from Chicago. He had them bringing him coke and all kinds of shit.
And then shortly thereafter, several months later, sure enough, in the middle of the night, they walked him out, and we found out the next day. And my father was dead. That was him sitting there in the visiting room and questioning what he did. He didn't put the blame on anybody else. He put the blame on himself because he...
Who else could he blame? He can't blame anybody else. He put Sammy in that position. So he had no one else to blame.
Made up until that point, he made all the right calls. I believe he did. I mean, as now an outsider looking in, I believe Jon made the right calls. I did.
No, he didn't. Having all those people go to the social club and report, those were all the wrong calls. What do you mean? He made a lot of mistakes. The guy wasn't perfect, okay? Maybe to him because it's his dad. So he wants him to look, or maybe he looks at him like he's perfect, but he made some major mistakes. All the publicity and it was too much. Having all those people report was a fatal mistake. Like there was lines of people coming in to see Jon Gotti. They got pictures of everybody. So him putting Sammy in that position was a fatal mistake. And he has no one else to blame.
People in place. He had tremendous amount of loyalty. Take into consideration the impact of Sammy Gravano flipping. Okay? He's the guy who is supposed to be hot, right? Boss is here. He knows all the secrets. Certainly was a greedy guy. He knew all the money was. That's for damn.
Another thing, how do you let the FBI in to plant bugs into your place? Even if it is upstairs, you go up there and talk and you don't know what's going on, who's coming and going into the place. Somebody let the FBI in there, and I think it was Sammy Gravano. Honestly, that's my hunch. It's that Sammy Gravano started cooperating long before he did. I think he's how they got the bugs in that apartment. The Flores twins, that's right. He was shaking them down for money. They were paying him like he was a movie star or some shit. I think Sammy Gravano had the bug planted in that apartment upstairs from the Ravenite long before Sammy ever cooperated. It's just a hunch, but I bet I'm right.
Now, as a result of Sammy flipping, minimum 57 guys get indicted. 57 guys, many of them high level, okay, due to his cooperation. He's a tremendous asset for the government, but he is a tsunami to the streets. There's an enormous panic going on now. People are running and hiding and whispering now, okay? And yet, we had that time, all those cases, that barrel of cases that came our way, there was one rat. Sammy Gravano. There wasn't anybody else. You know how many guys got life without parole? You know how many guys got 50-year bids? My Uncle Gene just came home to 29 straight years, okay? You know how many guys are just coming home now? They're just now coming out old men. They're drifting out of prison. That was all the guys that were around Jon Gotti. They grew up around Jon Gotti. The Bergen Hunt and Fish Club crew around Jon Gotti. Guys East New York around Jon Gotti. The Fatico boys, okay, around Jon Gotti. All those guys that grew up with John, okay? You had a confidential informant named Willie Boy Johnson, and that was it. That's all you had. And even he did better time than Gravano. When it came time to testify, they put him 22 months in solitary confinement, refused to flip, stood up, went to trial, and they won the trial. Ultimately, in the end, he was killed. But the point I'm trying to make is that up until that point, when John became that person, not that low, he became that guy, that administrator, okay? I believe for the most part, he made the right decisions. Now as an observer on the outside looking in, looking back, fancying myself a historian and replaying the whole scenario in my head. And now as an older, wiser head looking, not a young warrior that's full of testosterone that's ready to jump into the battle. Now as an older guy with lower testosterone that would probably make a better general today than he was then. Okay, that's me today. And now observing and replaying John's moves, my father's moves. And other than him being a degenerate gambler and the Gravano decision that he made.
Come on, your dad made a lot more bad decisions than just those two. Being a degenerate gambler, that's small shit. Letting Gravano around any of this shit was a terrible mistake. Terrible. The flamboyancy, the shunning your nose to the media, all of it. Shunning your nose to the government. Taunting them. They were never going to rest. And he felt it too.
I don't know of many things that you could have redone differently because John did it from the perspective of how he was raised and taught by his elders, the way they taught him. And I think for the most part, those guys did hard time, did it all. Now, was he right going to the Ravenite and the clubs and all that? No, I don't agree with that, but he wasn't going to.
Okay, so he admits right there, you made huge mistakes going to the Ravenite, all this shit. Having everybody show up there, the cops are outside taking pictures of every single person, and you're making them report to the Ravenite. Make it make sense.
Back down. That was the problem. It's like a fighter that's tailor-made. Mike Tyson's a knockout puncher, and you're not going to put, say, like at my time, a little older than you are, a Jerry Quarry-esque fighter who didn't know how to do anything else. A tough guy that's going to come forward and you got to knock him out. And John was one of those guys. He's going to come forward. He's not going to dodge and duck. He doesn't know how to. He didn't have kind of finesse. He was what he was, and he wasn't going to hide it. So he was tailor-made to be knocked out by the government.
Do you think the situation where he put a hit on Paul Castellano, you think that was the right move? You said two bad moves, right? Gambling, and you said Sammy. But how about the hit on Paul?
I don't know. Again, that's a
Listen, if the hit didn't happen to Paul Castellano, Gotti and his whole crew was going 100%. They were going to get killed, all of them, for being involved with the heroin trade. 100%. If Paul Castellano got those tapes before all this shit happened, it would have been a different history path. But Paul Castellano still would have went to prison. Even if Gotti and his whole crew went, Paul Castellano still would have went to prison. Always had the same theory about the bug. Let's face it. He showed no loyalty to his closest friends. He had nothing to gain by showing loyalty to Jon Gotti. 100%. The roach told to be the heroin, and reached and then reacted everything after he got high.
above my pay grade, okay? I do know this much. Sammy's interpretation of those events differ from the reality of what took place there, okay? And at a later date, we put together a compilation. We put together pieces together, including visits between my father and I. It's not quite what Sammy says. In fact, when they were supposed to shoot the movie,
No, I don't think Castellano would have flipped, but he still would have went to prison for life. Did this interview come out yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday or the day before. No, it was yesterday. Yeah, it came out yesterday. Has over 500,000 views already.
Gotti movie, they screwed up. The budget changed dramatically.
First one or
All right, here's where he says that they screwed up by having Travolta. So now he says that the movie was shit because of the budget. No, it was shit because Travolta played Gotti. Let's hear this.
situation where he put a hit on Paul Castellano. You think that was the right move? You said two bad moves, right? Gambling.
Of those events, father and I. It's not quite what Sammy says. In fact, when they were supposed to shoot the Gotti movie, they screwed up. The budget changed dramatically.
First one or second one?
Second one. First one was pretty good. Second one, John Travolta did an amazing job. However, the budget was nothing. It was not there. They took a screenplay, they took my book, and they went someplace else with it. But the ending was supposed to be shot where you saw the ending of the movie?
I've seen both movies.
Okay. See,
Wait. They took your screenplay. They went somewhere else with it, but you were involved with the whole thing. So you just let them take your screenplay and go some other direction with it? You were with them every step of the way. You were with them at the premiere. You were very happy about it when it was coming out, when it came out. You're all hugged up on Travolta. This is the best thing ever. They loved that. They loved it. The world didn't love it. The world hated it. John Travolta was a terrible Jon Gotti. Terrible. That was a terrible thing to do, is put John Travolta as Jon Gotti. Terrible. He looked nothing like him. Maybe you guys think that the makeup and all this shit maybe looked like, it didn't look like Jon Gotti. He looked like John Travolta.
the ending, Gravano's behind the driver's seat, John's in the passenger seat. Okay. Then the actual ending, that's how it ends, and then the actual ending comes back and there's a reflection on the stand, and headlights pass into the car, and it's Bobby Borriello driving the car and John's in the passenger seat. Sammy wasn't even there. Now, again, the truth comes from the teller of the story. So the truth is in the telling. Sammy's the only one that's telling the story. Nobody else is telling the story but Sammy Gravano.
Wait, you're saying
But we got more people telling the story now.
now that your father didn't tell Sammy to go do the job to take out
I'm saying
Paul?
my father in a wiretapped visiting room in Marion, Illinois, talking to me, had said to me, when he's reading the story about how this thing and after this conviction, he looked at me and he says, John, he says, I don't know what happened to that Paul, nor do I care. I don't care what happened to him, he says. But if Sammy Gravano was within 10 miles of Paul getting hurt, your brother should rot in hell. He would never say that because he adored my brother. So that was Jon Gotti's words. Again, this was above my pay grade. I was a kid then. This wasn't my game.
Now that's very.
That's pretty telling. So Sammy Gravano was not there when Paul Castellano died. He's lying about the whole situation, driving by in the car. I had a feeling he was lying about that. But anyway, we got a lot more content for you guys. If you want to donate to the show, you can donate through Cash App, Venmo, Super Sticker, Super Chat, Zelle. Cash App is Chatting with Staxx. If you want to be a guest on the show, hit up the email, BillStaxx2021. I appreciate all you guys. New interviews dropping every day at 10 p.m. Hope you guys have a great day. Stay tuned. It's about to get real. And remember, don't be a bitch.
And all new at 5, a major organized crime bust. 23 people under arrest now accused of stealing guns and cash.
Today, police revealed 4 organized crime groups are wreaking havoc.
From aggravated robbery to kidnapping, burglary, and more. Let's take a look at this. New pictures from court documents in this case. These are a few of the people who have been charged, and investigators say the money, tens of thousands of dollars, is all stolen.